welcome everybody. It's your boy, the Versace Donor, and we're here with a very special episode of VSW. That's right, we have the most victorious man in pro wrestling here, BRG.
You doing, my friend? How you feeling well, we're almost at 420 right now. How's everything going?
It's always 420 somewhere, and it's going good. Hey, I mean, I just saw you in a really interesting match up in Maine. Good time. 5 hour drive, but good time.
Yep, 5 hours. I mean, it can sometimes be more depending on traffic, but it was definitely an interesting match. It was first time ever teaming with LSG and having Ava Everett in my corner, and then yeah, it was nice to put Ethan Scott down for and put him in his place.
Well, I mean, he had the crowd behind him, but I mean,
He's a
let's
ring
face it,
announcer. He's not a wrestler.
he's doing Johnson's dirty work, and eh, I'm not a fan. I'll be honest. I've been a fan of you for a very long time. Back in 2017, I stumbled into Dedham and I saw you as world champion in NCW. Um,
Yes.
that was a little bit ago, but you were wrestling before that. When did you start getting into pro wrestling, like training and stuff?
In training, I got into training about 2013, and it took a long time before I actually like ended up doing matches. It really took me until like 2015 to really start wrestling. 2015, I had a few matches under my belt, and then around the start of 2017 is when I really started to take things seriously and went to Matt Taven and Mike Bennett's school, which eventually became Matt Taven and Vincent running every single class. And then from there, spent about 2 years there training with them, and then went on to train with Ryan Waters at the lockup when he was there. And then as of recently, I've been able to, pop in from place to place. The Beyond Institute of Professional Wrestling is one of them, with Thomas Santel and Brian Malonis, great guys. If you're looking for a school now, I would definitely recommend going and seeing Tom. He's an excellent trainer, very patient, definitely works with you and your skill set. And yeah, it's been a very wild ride. I've had the opportunity to grasp a lot of knowledge from a lot of different people, and I'm very grateful for it.
Now, right off the bat, you were saying, Matt Bennett and, Mike Canella. So how was it like training, right from the get-go with people that had already made it to the next level, had already done, the WWE thing?
It's very intimidating. So around that time is when I started training there. It was towards the end of Mike's TNA run, and during that summer he had debuted as Mike Kanellis. So that's around the time where he wasn't able to be at the school as often just because of the crazy schedule with WWE and everything. But the fact that you have guys like Matt Taven and you have guys like Vincent who are in Ring of Honor at the time and doing amazing things there. It's not like they're just like some random guys on Ring of Honor TV. Like they're the guys that are like on top of the world there. They're wrestling the Young Bucks and they're wrestling Cody Rhodes. Like they're wrestling major stars. It's intimidating to walk up to those people and ask them to critique you at first because they perform at a certain standard. And obviously, you want to make your trainers proud, but the main thing that you get scared of sometimes is disappointing them. And I am grateful at the fact that they have passed a lot of knowledge down to me. And on top of that, it's like it's one of the things that I miss, in all honesty, is training with Matt and Vincent and getting a lot of that knowledge that we used to get back then, and talking with some other guys that were at the school. They say themselves, like, sometimes I feel like we took it for granted, and not having it now, it can be, we kind of see it in the New England scene now.
Yeah, and breaking in, I have to say, you're not like a big stature guy. You're not, 6'5". You're not, 300 pounds. Did you find that to be kind of a little bit of barrier breaking into the industry? Getting matches, getting kind of taken seriously.
So someone said to me the other day that BRG, you were a show up, set up the ring, and get booked guy. You what you said right there is pretty accurate. A lot of people look at me, they see the baby face, they see that, I'm not jacked to the gills. They don't see that they see that I'm not 6'5". Like, they don't see me being like, when people think of a stereotypical wrestler, they think exactly what you described, that I'm not. Now, during that time and continuously going and helping out and doing what I could to get onto the shows, like, I did what I could to take this as seriously as possible, going to the gym, working out, working on promos. And in doing so, working on my craft, working on my promos, working on my body, there are the things that show everybody that when you finally get that opportunity, that you're taking this seriously. For me, it's been show up, help out, get the opportunity, blow them away, and then continuously build yourself up from there. And that has been 95% of my bookings throughout New England. It's how I got to Beyond. It's how I got to Limitless. It's how I got to Northeast Wrestling. It's how I got to NCW, where you saw me for the first time. It's how I got into Pioneer Valley Pro Wrestling. Pretty much most of the places that I have worked for over the years have all started with me just showing up and hoping for an opportunity.
And sometimes that's all that kind of takes, is just that first step of even believing in yourself that you can do it and kind of walking into the door. I heard Beyond is a great place that if you, want to prove, you can kind of go and try out to get onto like Wrestling Open.
Correct. Yeah. So Beyond has a lot of tryouts before Wrestling Open, and Wrestling Open has been a great platform in providing the fans of New England new and different stars that they may not have seen before. It stands out in a sense from other companies. And in all honesty, there was a thing back when I started where you kind of saw the same guys at different places throughout New England. Now you still have some of that crossover from different companies, but it's not as obvious. You feel like the Limitless roster is completely different than, say, the Wrestling Open roster and the Northeast Wrestling roster. You feel that they are all completely different, yet they have those core group of New England guys that really help make the show feel legitimate.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're gonna have a bunch, just depending on the area, you're gonna have a bunch of shows that are gonna have Shannon Thomas and Nico and all those guys. And if you get your North Shore shows, you're gonna get Brian Malonis and all of them guys that are kind of up that way, and they're just kind of that core into it. But yeah, it is much different. Where before, I feel like it was almost like the same show, just different outcomes.
Yeah,
And you could almost see repeat matches. And Beyond has given a great platform, I think, just for the indie scene in general, where, that's also why I did VSW. You got these great guys fighting in VFW halls on Fridays and Saturdays. No one's watching except the fans. They might have a social media platform, they might not. It might take off. Algorithms are a pain. So I figured I would help get more eyes and ears, and that's exactly what Beyond has done. They've gotten people, that I used to see in NCW and other places on IWTV. And then, they're in Japan now. And, they're elsewhere, like Rip Bison and Harry Von Bishop. They, got on there and kind of just moved up the ladder. And sometimes that's all it takes is just to get those eyes and ears.
Absolutely.
Now when I did first, like I said, coming around the scene, I did see you wrestling. In NCW, you were very, you were that champ, very cocky. One of the greatest things I think that happened was that Big City Rumble where you kind of just took out Curry Boy and won the thing yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Fans were just, that fan base in Dedham is wild. It's a wild
Hmm.
fan base. So they just really were kind of mad. But you know, elsewhere at the time, you were kind of on a losing
Hmm. So for me in Dedham, it was like my own personal playground when I was starting out. There was a lot of different ideas that I wanted to try and see if they would translate to an audience. And in doing so, there, I had been able to take those same ideas and translate them over to other places that I currently work at now. Now, when it came to the whole Curry Boy thing and me hiding under the mask to win a title shot against myself, that's one of my favorite moments because my friends were in the audience. They're my college buddies that when I was going to school. And they sat in the audience and they told me after we got out of there and went home and everything, they were like, we were pretty sure you weren't going to wrestle for the entire night. And they said, we didn't even have to see you wrestle. That moment of you taking off the mask is all we needed. And we drove like 2 hours to get there. So the fact that just that little moment was all they needed in order to enjoy the show, that just goes to show that wrestling moments mean so much more than just like having a 5-star match, in my opinion.
yeah, they do, and we never seen Curry Boy again either.
Yeah, yeah.
You stashed him good, but like I said, but and you were, I think, NEW, you had some like really good matches, out in Connecticut,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, that's where I wrestled Juice Robinson for the first time.
yeah,
And when I wrestled Juice Robinson, that was probably I look at that as a big turning point in my career. That gave me a lot more confidence than I realized. I It gave me a lot of new perspective on where I can go in wrestling and what I can do in wrestling. It's not like one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm in the ring with somebody who at the time was in New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm not just in the ring with a random New Japan guy. Like I am in the ring with a former like IWGP United States champion. And so for me to wrestle against him and come to the back and him tell me, like, you are a tremendous wrestler. You are a fantastic worker. Continue to keep doing what you're doing. That's literally that turning point where I was like, I definitely can do this. And my confidence skyrocketed from there. And
yeah. I mean,
honestly,
there's
I think I've been
some
doing good since then.
yeah, you have, and I mean, like I said, you do get, sometimes you're just the person that people just love to hate, whether it's the old Bieber jokes when you were a little bit younger, or just the fact that you aren't this huge cat.
Well, the Beaver jokes still happen.
Oh, really?
Uh, oh, last Sunday, they still happen. I looked into the audience in New Bedford, and there they were, giant Justin Bieber heads just being held up. And my mom was in the audience, and she told me, she's like, "You are never going to escape that chant. You will never
That,
escape it."
no, that's not. Yeah, that's like Doll. He's gonna be forever known as Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
Simply just put done. But yeah, so you started to move around in wrestling. Did you just that one? Was there any place like at that time period that you wanted to be in particular, or were you just like taking open bookings? What was your like goal then?
So you're talking about when I first like started, correct?
Yeah, let's talk like yeah, like 2018, 19.
Okay, so 2018, 2019, that's an easy one. So for me, there was three companies that I really wanted to work in: Beyond Wrestling, Northeast Wrestling, and Limitless Wrestling. Those were the three because in my mind, and this is all opinion, so don't have to take my word for it. Don't have to get mad at me for my opinion. but those are the top three companies in New England, in my opinion, at the time. And the fact is when it came to Limitless, like I made my debut alongside Channing Thomas in 2020 in front of no fans, just wrestlers on a IWTV special. COVID was
I
a
remember
very
we were
interesting
very
time.
happy. We were very excited for that because 2020 was just the shit. Everybody was just had nothing to do unless you
Mhm.
were attached to it. And
Yes.
Limitless, Beyond, NCW a little bit later, they all came out with tape programming, and
Hmm.
it just saved fans. It saved I think the wrestlers. It saved everybody at that point.
So for me, it was that first initial Limitless booking that really helped me make my way into. At that point, I had already been in Northeast Wrestling for a little bit, but it helped propel me into a better standing in the company. And then after that, it was in 2021 for Uncharted Territory for the Tag Team Discovery Gauntlet. That's where I made my Beyond Wrestling debut with Mac Daniels.
Yep. And I mean, you guys had, well, you previously worked in Limitless with him and Channing. You had
Hmm.
trios. How was it working with John Alba? He's a pretty cool guy.
So John Alba, it's an interesting story with John. When you look at where I went to college, I went to a college known as Quinnipiac University out in Hamden, Connecticut. In my first year, my freshman year, I was sitting in one of my journalism classes, and my professor mentioned John Alba. And I knew who he was because I had just met him at a show up in Maine. So I talked a little bit with her about him. And then the next time I saw him, I mentioned it. Ever since then, John and I have always just had a connection with one another because we both went to the same school. For those who don't know, John Alba is a legend in the communications department at Quinnipiac University. Everybody loves him because, I mean, the guy won an Emmy. He brings a lot of notoriety to the school because he went there. And it was just a tremendous school. I loved every second that I spent there. But yeah, that just going to the same college. John graduated in 2015. I started in 2016. So I started a year after he graduated. So we've always had that connection because we went to the same college together. And on top of that, we have this unbridled love for professional wrestling. So working with him was honestly a very full circle moment. Having him be involved in my Let's Wrestle championship win really brought the whole entire story together, and it made it one of my favorite memories in wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, that whole time was kind of memorable. I just remember, that first show back, and AG had just gone released from WWE, unfortunately, and they were teasing him coming back, teasing him maybe, and then the
Mhm.
music stopped. There was no you, Mac, Channing, and it was just the crowd just they just hated it, and I was just like laughing because I like the heels, and I just think it's funny, but it's
Mhm.
funny how psychological you actually really are. Because you can really get under their skin easy, and it was just as something as playing their favorite wrestler's song.
So it's funny because I remember when we were sitting behind the curtain, Channing told me, he goes, "BRG, you go out first because you have such a shit-eating grin. They're gonna be so pissed off when they see you." So, and if you watch the video, that's exactly what happened.
It is, and people were just like, oh, because everybody thought, and you had kind of AC, throwing hints in the beginning. So like, people don't know it's wrestling; anything can happen. And from there, I think that whole trios thing kind of played out very nicely, and then it got to the point that all three of you just you know, got to the point that it's time for solos. Shannon doing his thing, you doing
Mhm.
yours. You guys had already had these massive feuds in NCW and in other promotions
Mhm.
across New England, and it all told a great story. And then yeah, you kind of shifted over to the Let's Wrestle end of it and became their champion.
Yeah, Channing and I are the both champions of the top two companies in the state of Maine, and I think that is very fitting judging on the fact that we came into Limitless Wrestling and Let's Wrestle together.
Yeah, and you guys' names are kind of synonymous. You've been using a lot of storylines together. I mean, I'm taking you guys are pretty friendly, at least in the locker room.
Yeah, Channing's like a brother to me. There are days where he pisses me off and I piss him off. But at the end of the day, anytime he receives an accolade, I get an accolade, we're always the first people to congratulate one another because we have been honestly synonymous with one another in New England throughout the last, I want to say, 4 or 5 years. We just can't escape one another.
No, and
Whether we go on separate paths, we come back together eventually.
yeah, and it's not even in a bad way. Whether you guys are tagged up or you guys are kind of in the feud against each other, the chemistry is just there to make great epic moments funny and serious. And like I said, that whole limitless thing, just the whole story, and John kind of driving behind that, it just was very memorable. A lot of stuff. Um, a lot of fun times in that era. And now, you're even bigger than that. We're seeing bookings for like MLW. I'm seeing your name.
Yeah.
How's that been going?
Major League Wrestling, the continuous momentum that I'm gaining now is probably the most excited I've been for professional wrestling in a long time. For those who don't know, on January 6th, I will be on their premium live event, Kings of the Coliseum, against Love Doug. And it will be a Love is Blind match where both he and I will be blindfolded and be shades of Rick Martel and Jake the Snake Roberts.
Well, that's gonna be fun. And that's another person coming out of New England, and I love seeing, like these guys that, that have been here, in small halls one day, and then they are on these bigger scenes, short time after. New England has a very quick turnover. Um, you find it to be like, have you worked outside of New England, like going down south or Florida?
Absolutely. So I went down to Texas last year, managed to become friends with Lance Romance, who is the former manager of guys like Austin Theory, Ricky Starks, and Sammy Guevara. I'm currently a member of the International Players Club, which is his group down in Texas. Members include guys like Chris Cruz, Nate Bradley, and a guy a lot of people know, Cole Carter.
Oh,
So that's just one instance. In October this year, I managed to go out to California and wrestle for Supreme Pro Wrestling, SPW. I got to wrestle against Sir Samurai, and then the next day I got to wrestle against a gentleman by the name of Sanders, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed every second. In and Out is as good as people make it out to be. I had it 2 days in a row. Not ashamed to say that because it is really good. And then I managed to go up to Ottawa a couple months ago to wrestle for C4 Wrestling against Channing Thomas, GKM, and TJ Crawford in an NFW title match. We were the first match on the show. And by the end of it, like the crowd was going crazy. And it was such a fun time. And honestly, it's been a lot of fun these past 2 years, expanding outside of New England, going to a different country. It's been a lot of fun. And
especially a country that shares your hockey views. I mean, that must have been nice for once.
Oh my God. So it's hilarious because I was in Ottawa and they don't like Montreal there either. It's like Montreal, like when you go up to Canada, there are some people that are a little bit I would say that Quebec and Montreal is just fairly controversial because it's the only French Canadian uh, part of Canada that speaks French. And as someone who can attest to this, when you go to Quebec and you don't speak French, kind of get looked down upon. So I can see why Montreal is a little bit of a controversial area, but the city's beautiful. The one thing that I still have to mark off my bucket list is going to the Bell Center and seeing a Montreal home game. I've seen them play at Nassau Coliseum in Long Island. I seen them play um, at the Prudential Center in Jersey and at TD Garden in Boston. I still need to see them play at the Bell Center for one home game. That's all I need for my bucket list. Then I'll be good.
Nice, nice. And so working all these territories, was it like vast difference in the New England scene, or was it, somewhat similar?
So it's nice because there was a couple people that I know who, like for C4, for example, there was a couple people that I already knew from just networking through like Limitless and Beyond and Northeast. It's good to see familiar faces in new places that you're going. And then like when you go down to Texas, like I had already spoken to a couple guys down there. So it was good to see some familiar places. The good thing that I like to say about me is I'm fairly easygoing and I can make friends fairly easily. That's what happened when I went out to California. It took me about 10 minutes before I met this guy named Chima, the Punjabi lion. No relation to Jora Joel at all, but he was probably one of the coolest guys I met out there, and I had a blast talking with him and just hanging out with him for my entire stay there in California.
So is that the success to TikTok, just making a lot of friends?
The success of TikTok is having a beautiful girlfriend like I do, who gets you a bunch of views.
I know the women just kill on that.
Oh, absolutely. She still makes a killing on it.
But you guys were fun to watch in the pandemic, I have to say. I watched a lot of TikTok. There wasn't much to do, and like, that channel popped up. Wow, they're doing good. 'Cause, some people, they just be posting and it'll be like 1 view, 5 views.
Hmm.
I kind of play with TikTok only if it's gonna do good. I don't like to put stuff up that doesn't kind of do good. But that's neither here nor there. But you guys had a lot of fun with that and success with it, I think, at least by number view. I don't know how they really paid back then. I know they're cutting all like their pays now. It's kind of terrible for creators.
Yeah, so they paid me fairly decently. Like it's nothing that's gonna like sorry, excuse me. It's something that broke the bank,
No,
but
it's like
it
merchant.
was nice. But it was extra money that I can use for bills because everybody loves bills and everybody would rather just pay those off as quickly as possible. So,
Did you find doing things like that, or like how did you manage to like get through the pandemic? Because that was like a shutdown, at least in this area.
so for me, like the majority, like the big portion of the pandemic where everybody was kind of like locked in together, like I was still in my college housing. I was graduating in 2020 and we had our lease up until July that year. So even when school ended, like me and my buddies were just like, let's just stay here and have fun. I played poker, watched UFC, drank with my buddies every night, and it showed. Uh, and I honestly did not have a bad experience during COVID. The masks and all that crap was a little bit annoying. I shouldn't say a little bit. It was really annoying. But for basing off of other experiences that I've heard from people, I can't say I had it bad.
How did it affect the wrestling aspect of it? Did you put like a bummer on, like, oh, when am I gonna get back to the ring, or were you kind of had access, ring time and stuff?
No, I was miserable. I didn't wrestle for 6 months. I didn't even train for 6 months. Like the only thing that we could do for training at that point was Ryan Waters did a Zoom call every single week, and we got to do some pretty cool seminars during that point with like Tom Pritchard and Gabe Sapolsky. Like Ryan tried to make the most of the situation that we were given, and there's a lot of people that can't say that about their trainers. But the fact is that our trainer cared enough to continuously do the best that he could in order to continue teaching us through that time.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's good. I mean, like I said, there wasn't much in this area that can be done. I mean, I know people in Florida could still wrestle, and then finally they somehow got green light here for schools to be able to do, the tapings, and that's when you decided to, Beyond do their tapings, math class, and Limitless started running the road, and that's what we'd see on there and so forth. And a lot of wrestlers, we would get this kind of be on the scene that really, just debuted before the pandemic, but never really got anywhere.
The pandemic was definitely something. that I hope never happens again. There was talks earlier this year, and I was like, nope, don't don't bring that back. Do not bring that back. I do not want to be miserable again, and I do not want wrestling to get taken away from me again. Absolutely not.
No, especially now, like like I said, you really got this kind of groove momentum. You got this new look, this new kind of, glow when you come out. It's just, you were cocky before, and yeah, you had that, like shit eating grin, but now it's like you have something to kind of back cockiness up. You have, a limitless title around your waist. You have, these other prestigious accolades where maybe before you didn't have those.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's a lot of I try to stay as humble as possible because in the grand scheme of things, those accomplishments don't match up to a lot of things that a lot of people in the area have done. Now, am I proud of those accomplishments? Absolutely. I would not diminish them for a second, but I got to remember to stay humble and keep playing the long game at this point. Because if I translate that cocky persona that I portray on TV and bring it into the locker room and into my real life, it's going to do nothing but bring me down lower and lower and lower. And I am continuously trying to get better and get better and get better.
So would
So I try
you
to stay
say that,
as,
oh no,
go
keep
ahead.
going. I was gonna say, would you say that, that persona, that character is something that you kind of just, created, or was it more of an extension of yourself, or kind of wanted to be back in the day, or was it something you
So
saw on TV?
it is an extension of myself. I can't deny that. When I was playing hockey, I was the shit talker. I would run up to the I was 12 years old, like going up to a face off circle and like just making fun of the kid right to his face before the ref dropped the puck. Like this is just who I am. Thing is, I've matured a little bit in that time and I'm able to tone it down. But I mean, my girlfriend will be the first one to tell you, like, she'll tell me to quote unquote turn BRG off because she wants to see Brett, not BRG. That's how she distinguishes the two personas. And sometimes when you really get into a character and you really get into what you're doing in wrestling, it's hard to shut that off because it's like a switch that I have been able to figure out how to turn on and off, but sometimes it takes a little bit before I can actually turn it off.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think a lot of fans don't realize that, like, it's the same as acting. And you'll hear, actors take these extensive roles, whether it be on TV or not, and then they have to take a break because they went into that character so hard. It's like they need a mental break just to get back to themselves. It is easy to get lost. Anybody with any kind of persona can, because you're leading a little bit of a life. Um, but yeah, I always kind of wondered, did you have, like, growing up, did you see a wrestler was like, I kind of want to be a little bit like them or a little bit like this, and kind of just, pick and choose, um, what you kind of wanted to be. Were there any major inspirations from TV guys?
So when I started wrestling, well, when I started watching wrestling, it was 2011. And I was a big fan of Edge, Christian, and CM Punk. Those were my guys. Edge was the guy that got me hooked into wrestling, but then he retired about 3 months after I started watching wrestling. So then it was Christian, and that was my first experience liking a bad guy. And the first time I ever turned on Monday Night Raw was when CM Punk was sitting dead center in the ring, spotlight on him, and he was calling out Randy Orton. I was like, this guy is cool. So to see Christian and CM Punk both win the world titles at Money in the Bank was a pretty awesome experience. Now, CM Punk is a guy that is no nonsense and tells things how it is. And I can personally relate to that in some instances because not all the time, but there's times where I am blunt and just say how it is. And I have always wanted to be that guy that is great on the microphone, can draw a reaction from the crowd, whether good or bad, it doesn't matter to me. As long as there is a reaction, as long as fans are invested, that is something that CM Punk has had for years now. And now, when I look back into like the 80s and stuff, there are two people that come to mind when I think, who was able to always keep the audience invested throughout. And my personal favorites are Roddy Piper and Macho Man Randy Savage. And those are two guys that I continuously keep watching to learn not only new things in the ring, that's more so for Macho Man, but when it comes to like mic work and talking in front of a camera, you watch Roddy Piper and he keeps you invested the entire time.
I can definitely see that. I can definitely see some of Randy Savage in you. You know, you do have a few of the moves you've been like working the elbows and such, the up stuff. But yeah, I mean, you've been vicious on the mic. I mean, I just on Saturday you told the guy he would be visiting his dead dad. I think you like put half of the audience in shock. But
That's
yeah, you
like
know,
that's the thing. And here's the thing behind it. When it comes to situations like that, I I try to make things as relatable as possible. Like, yes, I have said some awful things in my lifetime. There are some things that I wish I could take back. There are a lot of things that I will just go with. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, I know that Jason Maverick will hear that and it still sits in his mind to this day. And I know this because I can relate to him in that aspect. So when I know a feeling and I know how someone is going to react to a certain situation, I'm going to take advantage of that because there's nothing worse than having that little voice in the back of your head telling you you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. It's a mental mind fuck. In all honesty,
especially when that voice is your own voice telling you that. That's the worst.
absolutely.
So you got all these guys. I know Eric Johnson's now challenged you to a cage. I'm guessing you're gonna beat him fairly easy. I mean, you're in much better shape. And, outwork him.
So here's the thing about Eric Johnson, and he has given me my start in Maine professional wrestling. I would not have started in Maine pro wrestling without Eric Johnson. Here's the thing though. Since he brought me in, I have excelled. I have continuously made myself better. And he's one of those guys that will go in the locker room and complain that he doesn't have his Let's Wrestle championship spot. He doesn't have his title. He doesn't have this, that, whatever. And the other thing, what have you done in that time? Yes, you are a Maine legend. That's fantastic and all. But I'm the champion. And you don't just get a championship by being a legend. You have to actually earn it. You actually have to win it. You actually have to do the right things and carry yourself as a champion instead of bitching and moaning continuously.
I mean, yeah, and I mean, honestly, is he gonna give as good
Ooh, we got to cut out.
a good try?
I'm sorry, you cut out just for a second there.
I said, I mean, let's face it, he's not gonna give as good of a match as like Dustin Whaler did down in PG. That was, a decent match. He gave a good try.
Yeah. So here's the thing. You know, Dustin Waller and Eric Johnson, two very different wrestlers. Just because I look at Eric Johnson and say, okay, he's no Dustin Waller, doesn't mean he's not a credible threat. He is. That's why, like I said, he is a legend in main wrestling, and that is not something to take away from him. But when it comes to me, I'm beyond me. I'm beyond New England. I am seen on a national basis now. And if he thinks that just being a legend in one singular state is going to get him the Let's Wrestle championship, then he's more delusional than I thought he was.
In the steel cage, that plays no factor.
Well, the steel cage, I will say, he does have an advantage of me against me because this is my first ever steel cage match. He has that advantage on me because I know he's had plenty of steel cage matches in the past. But that never deters me. There's been plenty of matches that I have gone into blind and not knowing what to expect and still come out victorious.
Oh, I've seen it. I've watched it, and like I've said, I've been watching your career. In 2017, I saw you come out and, I'm like, oh, who's this kid? He's kind of different than the other wrestlers. And, I had to do a little research and I looked and I got some tape from NEW. I haven't gone out to their show yet. They're a little bit of a hype, but I have bought some of their, DVDs and stuff from their website. And then I started watching some of the, the Top Rope and the other on the Super Show, all of
Pro
that stuff.
Wrestling Super Show. Actually, it's funny. I just helped Channing Thomas win his steel cage match against Nico Silva at the last Pro Wrestling Super Show. Like I said, those careers
There's
intertwined.
the guy. He can give you pointers on the steel cage.
Channing, absolutely, he can.
Um, but yeah, that's another great event, and you've had some great matches there. I mean, I think I saw one time you faced like Boogeyman or something. It was kind of cool.
Correct. Yeah, no, that Boogeyman story is interesting. I remember he smashed the clock over his head, and there was glass everywhere in the ring. And I looked over at Cam Zagami, and I knew we were we were screwed. So I just see the glass right behind me, and I'm like, I'm not going into that. So I'm just kicking that glass away from me before whatever happens happens. And I ended up getting choke slammed to the mat and eating worms. So
Not a good day. Not a good day. Um, so as you're looking out on the scene, is there any names right now that are like, oh, I really want to, have a good match with them. I want to, do something with them, whether it be tag or something.
in all honesty, see, you're putting me on the spot, and that's where my brain tends to turn off. There is nobody immediately that comes to mind. Um, no, no, because in all honesty, everybody should want to be wanting to wrestle me because I am one of the most talked about people in New England right now. I am one of the guys that is leading the New England scene right now. And so everybody should be wanting to wrestle me. I don't need to keep my eyes out for any up and coming talent. They'll come to me, and if they're any good, then they'll beat me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And like I said, your reputation is there. You are making those moves. Let's not talk about wrestlers for a second. Is there any promotions on the horizon that you're like, okay, now I'm at this level. I want to get to the next. Is there anybody on the horizon you're kind of been scouting with or talking with?
For me, I'm excited because it feels so much in its infancy. I'm excited to see where my career in Major League Wrestling goes. It's still in its infancy. It's only been about 3 months now, but I know in the next couple years I can become a major player there. Now I just have to consistently keep doing what I do, and that's not only get better, but outperform everyone else on the show. And that's something that I take a lot of pride in. So who knows what the future holds in Major League Wrestling, but that is the one thing that I'm most excited about in the next coming years.
Very good. And, we'll have to keep an eye on that. And what would you, suggest to anybody that wants to, walk, through the doors right now, get into the industry, or even kind of revitalize their career to actually, be useful or meaningful?
So for me, this is something that I've noticed a lot since COVID. When it comes to wrestlers breaking in, after 2 to 3 years, you guys are still green. You guys have not quote unquote paid your dues yet. There are still a lot of things that you can do in order to gain opportunity and give yourself a good standing in the not only New England wrestling scene, but just professional wrestling in general. For me, like I said, I went out and I seeked out opportunities by helping out at companies, helping out where I could, and kicking it out of the park when it came to taking that opportunity and running with it. If you are an aspiring pro wrestler, go get trained by someone notable and then continue to stay humble throughout that entire process because even 5 years in, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just faking it till I make it. Even now, I don't know everything. And I have been wrestling for 8 years now. I don't know everything. And I'm continuously wanting to learn more. And there are some guys that I see that think they know everything. They think that The entire world revolves around them, and they don't want to take advice. I don't understand why. I never will, but for the people that are just starting out, trying to get better, continuously try to seek new knowledge from different people and continuously stay humble the entire time.
Great advice, and I think, humble is really the key word. I think, it's a lot of, the people I have on my show, a lot of them have, gone on, the bigger stages of like Limitless, Beyond, some at GCW, some, here, there. And, that common word among them is humble, being humble, staying humble, listening to vets, listening to people in the locker room, not just always running.
And I personally say that as someone that wasn't humble when they started. I am saying this as someone who is learning from their mistakes. There are a lot of things that I did and said. I was a dumbass teenager that didn't know when to shut his mouth, and I paid the price for it in a few instances. So take it from somebody who's experienced the downfall of not being humble. Stay humble.
Very good, very good. And we're just gonna about wrap it up. Speaking of humble, I actually got something. Is there any you mentioned the Juice Robinson match? Is there anything else that's just been like a match to you that was like that humbled you? That was like with someone that you really idolized, that was really, excited about, kind of giddy about you.
One of the first real opportunities to work with a wrestling name, a legend, was with Bob Backlund. When I found out that I was going to be in a segment with him, I was blown away because as someone that respects those who came before me, working with Bob Backlund, who is one of the longest reigning WWF champions in history, that's a true honor. And to take the crossface chicken wing, that's a huge honor as well. And not for nothing, that man is impressive. He's 70 something years old and he can still do a headstand, no problem. Hats off to him. That would be one of like legends wise. When it comes to one of my favorite matches, I would say the three-way between every single member of Prestigious at the Vacation Land Cup in 2022. That is a match that I have not only gone back and rewatched so many times, but it's a match that I love and I hold near and dear to my heart because I'm facing people that I literally broke into Limitless with. And now we're all going on our separate paths, and this is the starting point. And it was a great initial, I'm trying to find the words right now. It was so poetic in how we finished everything off in that night. Now we closed the chapter of Prestigious right then and there.
Yeah, it was really good, like I said, storytelling. And Limitless has a really good niche for like getting stories across. Sometimes it's not as easy as people think on the indie scene because of the way, it runs month to month, not weekly. It's not like WWE where you get 2 shows a week. You have to get people like, invested through online, keep them going to the next show, then keep them for another month going. And, depending, but, it was done beautifully. Like I said, we were kind of invested ourselves. I think I sponsored a few of the matches. And just being a fan of that whole prestigious kind of gimmick was just, like I said, and Albert topping it off with his attitude that he kind of brought to it. Max his own attitude. Everybody just had that, that just shit attitude. It was great.
Yes. And I'll add one more, which happened this year. My match against Casey Navarro for the Northeast Wrestling Live Championship. That was a title that when I went into Northeast Wrestling, I was like, I want that championship. That is the championship that I want right now. And I manifested it and I made it happen. And I walked away with that title. That title is literally sitting across from me right now. I'm looking at it right now as we speak.
Wow, that's great. That's great, Brett. Honestly, BOG, that's awesome. And last question, simple. In case the folks that are listening and living under a rock, how can they like find well you buy your stuff, check out your pages, subscribe if they're not already doing so?
Easiest way to find me is just go on any social media platform and type in Victorious _BRG. Keep everything pretty basic for everybody. So if you can't find me, then you're clearly living under a rock.
That's great. No, you'll see some people that have like, well, my Instagram name is, my Twitter name is that, and this is that, and it's like, how am I supposed to find you? Just have one name.
Yes, I agree.
Well, thank you very much, BRG, for coming on. It's been a great time, and we will see you soon. A few things are coming up. Festival. We're gonna have that steel cage match with Derek Johnson of Let's Wrestle. I'm sure I'll be at that and
Yeah.
more. So take
Yeah.
care and have
If I can
a good
just
holiday.
if I can just plug a few things real quick.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So just starting at the beginning of the year, January 5th, Pro Wrestling Super Show. I will be there along with my buddy Channing Thomas. And then January 6th, you can watch me live on Fight TV against Love Doug in a Love is Blind match for Major League Wrestling.
I think I'm actually going to show you. I think I bought tickets the other night.
There you go.
I might be there by myself, but I think I ended up buying tickets like 2 in the morning when I saw it announced. So who knows? I've like gone some pretty far places. Like one time I just ended up with tickets for the IWTV 100. Like I ended up having to drive like 6 hours out.
Hey,
Well,
6 hours well spent, I'm sure.
it was. It's wrestling. Thank you very much. And if I don't see you, have a happy holidays.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. And thank you everybody at home for watching. Have yourself a great night. Versace, showing her out.